Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to do my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we have an MJF segment. MJF comes down to the ring. Before he says anything, he is interrupted by Danny Garcia. AEW Dynamite last night was live from Buffalo, New York, Garcia's hometown. Garcia then hypes up the crowd. He also hypes up MJF. Garcia then says MJF helped him in his career and helped him become a pillar in AEW. Garcia says that he wants to be more than just a pillar of AEW. He says he wants to be the backbone of AEW and what it represents. MJF then hypes up Forbidden Door, kind of shills a little bit, if you will. MJF then hypes up Garcia. And then MJF announces that he would like to have a match with Garcia at this year's All In. Crowd goes crazy. Danny Garcia goes crazy as well at the announcement. But after the announcement takes place, Will Ospreay comes down to the ring. Ospreay then grabs a microphone and hypes up Garcia. And then Ospreay offers Garcia an international title shot and an AEW title shot in the foreseeable future. A couple things about this, man. Number one, MJF coming back, and I mentioned this the past couple weeks, past couple months. MJF was one of those individuals for AEW that was out with injury that I think AEW desperately needed. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things going on with the ratings and stuff like that, which I will talk about towards the end of the podcast. But it doesn't hurt having MJF back, number one. Number two, the body of work that Garcia has put in, it stands out. Garcia is a workhorse, man. And to be honest with you, Garcia is getting a lot of praise, obviously, from MJF and Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay is probably, if not the best wrestler on the planet right now. And Ospreay takes notice of what Garcia has been doing, which is the reason why Ospreay is going to give Garcia a title opportunity in the foreseeable future. So I'm all for this, man. I think this was a great way to start Dynamite last night. And to see, where AEW is heading towards and everything else like that. And like I said earlier, I will talk about AEW, the ratings and stuff like that towards the end of the podcast and give my thoughts on that as well. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of the night. It is Blackpool Combat Club versus Los Ingobernables. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a good showcase by both teams, back and forth matchup. Takagi and Claudio both exchanged in the middle of the ring, but Los Ingobernables was keeping the pace of the match. Claudio then hits a giant swing in the middle of the ring. Moxley and Takagi then both exchange in the middle of the ring. Takashi then hits a Death Valley driver on Wheeler in the middle of the ring. Moxley then grabs a chair, uses the chair. Referee sounds for the bell. And your winners of the match due to disqualification are Los Ingobernables. After the match, Jon Moxley is standing in the ring looking furious. And all of a sudden, we see Naito. Naito comes down to the ring, tries to. Moxley and Naito then both exchange on the ramp. And then Bryan Danielson and Takagi get face-to-face after the attack Takagi landed on Wheeler Yuta at the end of the match. I'm all for this, man. I'm all for this matchup between Moxley and Naito. Obviously, they have a long history. Currently, Moxley right now is the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. It looks like Naito's trying to take that belt back and bring it back to Japan. So it's going to be a great match for Forbidden Door. It's one of those matches on the card that I'm definitely looking forward to this weekend at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is an Owen Hart Cup quarterfinal matchup. It is Rey Fenix versus Jay White. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Fenix and Jay White, with Fenix hitting a Hurricane Rana on Jay White. Fenix was trying to keep the pace of the match. Fenix then hits a frog splash off the top rope on Jay White for a near fall. But Jay White gets up, hits a brain buster on Fenix that looked absolutely brutal for a near fall. And then Jay White hits his signature Blade Runner on Rey Fenix. Pins for the 3, and your winner of the match. And moving on in the Owen Hart Cup tournament is Jay White. Hats off to Jay White for getting the win in that matchup. After the match, though, Christian Cage comes down with the Patriarchy, tries to get in the ring, tries to get face-to-face with Bullet Club Gold. That doesn't happen due to the fact that you have all those members of Bullet Club Gold in the ring. But it looks like Cage was trying to send a message, and the message is pretty clear. Christian Cage and the Patriarchy with Nick Wayne and Killswitch are trying to become the new AEW Trios champions. Moving on from that, we have the Acclaimed having a segment in the middle of the ring. Acclaimed mocked the Young Bucks. Then the Elite end up showing up. Elite then pretty much mocked the Acclaimed, but they are interrupted. But the Elite said they want to have a match at the Forbidden Door with the Acclaimed, and like I said, they are interrupted by none other than the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Tanahashi. Tanahashi announced that he will be teaming up with Anthony Bowens and Max Caster versus the Elite. This is a big deal. This is going to be one of those other matches on the Forbidden Door card I'm definitely looking forward to. Obviously, there's a lot of history there between Okada and Tanahashi, and this is going to make for one hell of a match at the Forbidden Door. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's a 6-woman tag team matchup. It is Toni Storm teaming up with Mariah May and Shirakawa versus Anna Jay, Harley Cameron, and Saraya. I thought it was a decent match. It was a back-and-forth matchup between both teams, with Storm, Mariah May, and Shirakawa keeping the pace of the match, with Shirakawa ultimately hitting the finish, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Toni Storm, Mariah May, and Shirakawa. After the match, Shirakawa then goes to grab champagne to celebrate with Mariah May and Toni Storm. She goes to hit Toni Storm with the champagne bottle, but misses and hits Mariah May. Moving on from that, we have a Chris Jericho segment, again, from the Learning Tree. Jericho says that he is here to help other talent. Jericho then mocks Samoa Joe. Jericho then introduces a new member to the Learning Tree due to the fact that Brian Keith was injured. And that member would be none other than Minoru Suzuki. Suzuki is shown on the Titantron. He mocks Jericho and then tells Jericho that he's confused. Suzuki is not going to join the Learning Tree. Suzuki wants an opportunity to wrestle Chris Jericho for the FTW title. After that, Joe and Hook and Shibata come down to the ring. Joe then mocks Jericho, and then Joe, Hook, and Shibata attack the Learning Tree. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Kyle O'Reilly versus Zack Sabre Jr. This was an okay matchup, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup. There was a lot going on in this match. Sabre Jr. was keeping the pace of the match. Zack and O'Reilly then both exchanged in the middle of the ring, with Zack applying a submission hold on O'Reilly. The referee sounds for the bell, and your winner of the match is Zack Sabre Jr. After the match, Orange Cassidy was on commentary. He comes down to the ring. He confronts Zack Sabre Jr., and then Ishii comes down to the ring to save Orange Cassidy. Now, a couple things about this matchup, like I said, it was confusing, was because throughout this match, you had Orange Cassidy on commentary, and then ringside, well, in the stands, if you will, you had members of Undisputed Kingdom, and then one member from Bullet Club's Dogs of War, or War Dogs. Number one, I mean, to me, this could be something where this could be a possible partnership here. Now, I don't know if it really pertains to the Forbidden Door. It might only pertain to the Forbidden Door, but it definitely got a lot of eyeballs open when you see Roderick Strong and Matt Taven and Mike Bennett sitting there with a member of Bullet Club. Now, if this does work and there is a longer partnership between these two stables, that's a huge deal. And from what I understand, on Rampage, Roderick Strong is teaming up with that member that he was sitting with last night on Dynamite on Rampage this Friday. So, who knows? It might just be for the Forbidden Door, but, keep our options open. They might want to team up and just make this humongous stable with, kind of combining Undisputed Kingdom and the War Dogs for Bullet Club. So, I'm all for that. Moving on from that, we have our next match of the night. Is the main event of Dynamite. It is the Gates of Agony versus Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland. Again, good match, back and forth matchup between both teams, with Ospreay and Swerve keeping the pace of the match. Ospreay hits an Oz cutter for a near fall, but then Ospreay finishes the matchup with a hidden blade, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Ospreay and Swerve. After the match, Ospreay then grabs the AEW title once again, which ultimately pissed off Swerve, and Swerve ends up getting mad, attacks Ospreay, and leaves him motionless in the middle of the ring. Couple things I want to talk about with Dynamite, man, before I get out of here. Obviously, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, and there's a lot of things with AEW I want to touch bases on. Number one, the ratings. I know Dynamite's episode, I believe it was last week, was the lowest rated show in AEW's history. Now, and I mentioned this to you guys multiple times, and I wasn't really a big fan of the ratings. I really wasn't, locked into what the ratings were and stuff like that. But I will say this, and I believe I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, that do the ratings matter as far as their TV contract is concerned? Yeah, I think it would. I think Time Warner and Warner Media are looking into that as a possible demerit towards AEW. Now, I don't know how extensive that will go, or if there will be anything done between Time Warner and Tony Khan. They might, Time Warner and Warner Media might just brush it underneath the rug and be like, it is what it is. I know a lot of people were talking about the fact that, before Dynamite, in that week, there was a lot of runoffs, and they were talking about Big Bang Theory and how it, it contemplated, it didn't contemplate, but it kind of ruined Dynamite as far as the ratings were concerned, because people were watching Big Bang Theory and then left and really weren't interested in Dynamite, or vice versa. Look, man, to be honest with you, they can blame it on whatever the hell they want. I'm saying that solely on Dynamite. But the problem is, and it's going to be the same thing, and I'm going to reiterate this every single damn time until it changes, is there's no direction with AEW. There's no storylines behind what AEW is doing. And I'm not taking anything away from Forbidden Door. And that was the next thing that I was going to get into. I think for once that, the build leading up towards Forbidden Door is actually not that bad. I'm actually looking forward to the Forbidden Door. But with that being said, Forbidden Door, and after I watched last night's Dynamite, I got to thinking, Forbidden Door and the concept of Forbidden Door is done. I think it's a dead issue at this point. The concept of it is done. This is something that we're getting every year, and it seems like every year we're kind of getting the same matches between New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW. And it feels exactly the same. We're getting the same players from New Japan Pro Wrestling and the same players from AEW involved in this Forbidden Door, usually. But with that being said, the concept is dead when it comes to Forbidden Door and AEW. To me, I think the only thing that would make it logical at this point would be, AEW's best versus New Japan's best. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like a Survivor Series thing where it's, AEW World Champion versus the New Japan World Champion. Something like that, or some kind of concept like that. But the concept itself and what it represents, I just feel like it's a dead issue at this point. And it does hinder AEW. I do. I think a lot of the stuff that AEW's been doing has been hurting them severely. The other big rumor that I want to talk about here briefly is Shane McMahon. Now, there's been a lot of rumors and headlines going all around social media and stuff that Shane McMahon is possibly going to be joining AEW. And there were some people that I talked to that were like, hey man, we want your thoughts on this. Well, here it is. My thoughts on Shane McMahon joining AEW. Is it a possibility? Sure. I'm not going to sit here and say that Shane McMahon going to AEW is not a possibility. I think at this point anything is possible. I know that there has been talks between Shane McMahon and current AEW talent. Now, what they're talking about, who knows? Now, are there some people probably within AEW that want Shane McMahon there? Yeah, and there's probably some that don't. I will say this. If Shane happens to come over to AEW, is it going to be a holy shit moment? Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody looking at the narrative, seeing a McMahon walk through the door in AEW would be huge, monumental. No matter how you look at it, whether it was Vince, Stephanie, Shane, whichever McMahon it was going to be monumental if one of them individuals decided to go over to AEW. Monumental. And when this was kind of, idea was floating around, I thought about a bunch of different things when it pertains to bringing Shane into AEW and what it kind of reminded me of. And I hate being a broken record here, but it reminded me a lot of WCW back in like late 2000, 2001, or when, Vince bought out WCW, where you see Vince on the Titantron for Nitro, and then all of a sudden you've seen Shane McMahon walking down, the ramp, getting into the ring and saying that he is now the owner of WCW. Now, obviously that wasn't the case, but it was the case of the fact that Vince did buy out WCW, and it was the end of WCW's run as we know it. I'm not sitting here saying that Shane's going to come into AEW and buy out Tony Khan for AEW. I'm not saying that. But what I will say is this. Would it be a breath of fresh air to AEW? Absolutely. Absolutely. Hands down. Because at the end of the day, you got to look at the narrative, man. The ratings are struggling right now immensely for AEW. And they need a shot in the arm like you would not believe. They need something that's going to bring some eyeballs to the product and create curiosity within the company. Because right now they're not doing that. Right now the storyline, even with the Elite and Tony Khan, that is a dead issue. That shit's going nowhere. It's not. I know Blood and Guts is coming up in July. It's going to be live from Nashville. I get that. But what do you do after that? And right now you're doing nothing with that storyline to even build off that right now. The Young Bucks are literally tied up with the Acclaimed and vice versa. They're not doing anything else right now with Tony Khan. That's not happening. So, again, I do wonder how the end game between the storyline with Tony Khan and the Elite is going to come to an end. This is where I bring in Shane McMahon. Bringing a guy in like Shane could be the mouthpiece for the Elite. That coming in as an asshole, if you will. That, coming in as, just arrogant. You know what I'm saying? Just showboating and everything else. And Shane can do that. Shane can absolutely 100% do that and be a heel. 100%. If I was AEW and Tony Khan, and this pertains solely on the fact if I was bringing Shane McMahon into the company, I would bring Shane McMahon into the company and have align himself with the Elite. Be the mouthpiece, if you will, to the Elite. Run business for the Elite. And to me, it's a remake, with all due respect, it's a remake and a better version of what Shane McMahon had a long time ago in the Attitude Era with the Mean Street Posse. This is Mean Street Posse 2.0 written all over that. And that's just the vibe I'm getting. And I think it would benefit not only the Elite, but Shane McMahon and AEW as a whole to bring in a guy like Shane to align himself up with the Elite. And I've mentioned this multiple times as far as the storyline is concerned and how I would, if I had to be a fantasy booker for a minute, how it would, end the storyline with the Elite and Tony Khan. And I mentioned this multiple times to you guys. I would have Tony Khan run AEW Dynamite, and I would have the Elite and maybe Shane McMahon run Collision and split the rosters. Because at this point, they need to. And the funny thing, and here's the other thing too, and this is the real, kick in the pants here. If you look at the ratings as of late, and I could be mistaken on this, so don't quote me on this, but I think from what I've seen, it looks like Rampage their numbers are steady right now, where Collision is declining and Dynamite's declining. And Rampage ain't even live. That's a taped show. So they need something, man. They need a shot in the arm immensely. I mentioned this after multiple pay-per-views now for the past few months with AEW, that they need to hit the reset button. And it needs to happen. You hear Tony Khan on Twitter saying that, we have the best women's division in pro wrestling, period, right now. Yeah, I have to say I believe that a little bit, to be honest with you. But that's not going to mean a damn thing if you're not building around that and creating storylines and creating, getting some kind of storyline based for this women's roster. It's the same thing with the men, but for the women, yeah, you have a solid women's roster. You got Mercedes Moné, you got Mariah May, Saraya, you got Harley Cameron, you got Mercedes Moné, you got Toni Storm. Toni Storm, and I mentioned this multiple times, man. Toni Storm is carrying that women's division on her back. It is not Mercedes, it is Toni Storm. With that being said, obviously there's still some injuries that are kind of hindering the women's division. Number one, Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter's been out for months. And, I don't know what's going on. And the reason why I'm saying this and why I'm saying I don't know what's going on is because a lot of it does come down to creative. And, you look at a situation with Ricky Starks, and I mentioned this last week, that Ricky Starks needs to come back to television. And I found out that Tony Khan had pitched a bunch of different creative ideas for Ricky, and Ricky has turned them down. So, it also goes with the injured talent that's out there. I'm not saying they're not injured and they're not 100% medically cleared, but let's say hypothetically they are. But the reason why we're not seeing them on television right now is because they're turning down creative decisions that was made by Tony Khan. That could be another big factor. And, a lot of people are saying, well, you're not going to see Jamie Hayter until you see Britt Baker. I think that's bullshit. I do. I think Jamie Hayter should come back and run roughshod on that women's roster and get herself an opportunity back at Toni Storm for that AEW World title. It writes itself, ladies and gentlemen. 2, Britt Baker. There's a lot of matches Baker could have. Everybody, especially me, who wouldn't want to see Britt Baker versus Mercedes Moné? That match alone would sell like sliced bread. Why would you not want to see that? I think Tony Khan needs to pull his head out of his ass. And that might be a hot take for a lot of people. I know some people even got mad at me for the Jeff Jarrett comments that I made last week about him being in an Owen Hart Cup tournament. I don't take back what I said. I don't. Because here's the thing. How long has Jarrett been with the company? And if Jarrett has that much, importance of what Owen Hart is and everything else and how close he was a friend to Owen Hart, okay, that's fine. I get that. But with that being said, why does he have to be in the tournament? Why can't he be a person that presents the trophy to the winner? You know what I mean? Why can't he do that? Why does he have to be in the tournament? And not only that, you look at everybody that right now that's a part of this Owen Hart Cup tournament, whether it's Jay White, Ray Phoenix, Pac, Claudio Castagnoli. There was no symbolic video package for any one of those individuals except for Jeff Jarrett. And I feel like the reason why they did that is because they were getting flack, AEW and Jeff Jarrett, because people were legitimately pissed off, including myself, that Jarrett was in this tournament to have an opportunity possibly to challenge for the AEW World title at All In. I will say this. If Jarrett somehow, some way, makes it to the finals and wins, AEW messed up. AEW messed up. I get that he was friends with Owen. I get that. But you're going to make that man win the finals possibly of the AEW Owen Hart Cup tournament and get a title opportunity at All In? Come on, man. That is a hard pass. Hell no. No. And I feel like what they did with that video package was to defend Jeff Jarrett and solidify his opportunity and solidify the reason why he's in this tournament. Nobody else in this tournament got a video package like Jarrett did. And my standpoint's the same. I understand that you were friends with Owen Hart. I get that. That's great. That's awesome. Owen Hart is, sorely missed. Absolutely. And I'm glad AEW and Martha Hart are having a working relationship to present AEW and the fans of AEW and Wrestling Alone a tournament to, remember, if you will, Owen Hart. It's great. It's a great thing. But Jeff Jarrett in the tournament? No, man. No. You could save me with that shit. It's ridiculous. They did that to solidify his opportunity and let the fans know why he's a part of this tournament. Nobody else got a video package like that. So to me, that's bullshit. Nobody was getting that. I know Jeff Jarrett is in the tournament. He's going to have a match here against a mystery opponent. Who knows who that's going to be? But I'm telling you right now, if Jarrett makes it to the finals and he wins it, AEW messed up. Big time. Big time. And hopefully after this Forbidden Door this year, AEW goes back to the drawing board again and we get more creative storylines, if you will. They're going to need something, man. I'm not going to sit here and say again after another pay-per-view, oh yeah, after this is going to be a shot in the arm for AEW. No. I don't think it's going to happen. But do they need it? Yeah, absolutely. Because the company, it's showing with the company. Fans are getting bored. Fans are getting tired. Myself included. Because we're getting the same shit every week. I'm not saying the bill leading up to Forbidden Door is bad. I'm not saying that. But the concept of Forbidden Door and what it represents, that concept is dead. The whole AEW versus New Japan, it's a dead issue. And some people could say, oh, well, it's not just them and New Japan this year. It's CMLL and Stardom. Okay. Let's talk about it for a second. For what I understand right now, you have one match for a woman that's actually has wrestled or currently wrestles for Stardom. And that is Toni Storm versus Shirakawa. So that's one match. One individual from the Stardom promotion. That's one. Then you look at CMLL. As of right now, you got one match. As far as I'm concerned, and I may be wrong on this, but the only match that's been talked about a little bit is the matchup between MJF and Hechicero at the Forbidden Door. That is it. There's no Bullet Club involved with CMLL anymore. That's done. And it looks like Hechicero aligned himself up with the Gates of Agony. Again, one match. And then you have, obviously, New Japan. New Japan's getting a lot of matches. Or New Japan has a lot of involvement in the Forbidden Door, and rightfully so. They were there since day one when it pertains to Forbidden Door. But the idea with CMLL and Stardom, I feel like that whole thing has failed. One match for each promotion so far. And I feel like that's what ultimately is going to bite AEW right in the foot. To be honest with you, it does nothing. So the concept, like I said, I'll reiterate one last time, the concept of Forbidden Door is done. It is a dead issue. To me, I said this before, if they were going to do Forbidden Door this year, which they are, they should have been like, you know what, we had Forbidden Door twice in the States, let's do Forbidden Door at the Tokyo Dome in Japan. Or somewhere in Osaka. Why not? What's fair is fair. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, the concept is done. It's not, there's no excitement around it. Prime example, everybody's happy to see MJF back, but I can tell you right now, no one really gives a rat's ass about MJF going up against Hechicero due to the fact that not a lot of fans in the state even know who the hell Hechicero is. The only, remembrance we have of this guy is the fact that he had that great match with Bryan Danielson. That's it. A lot of fans don't even know who the hell this guy is. There's no storyline there between MJF and Hechicero. Nothing. It was a booking decision off the whim. It was a Tony Khan decision, and he threw it against the wall and hoped the idea would stick to the wall. And that's what it was. There's no build. There's nothing. So do I think the Forbidden Door is going to be an all-time greatest pay-per-view for AEW? Hell no. No, I don't. But do I think they need to switch shit up after this Forbidden Door? Yeah. The concept's dead. It's not, there's no more excitement around it anymore. At all. None. Obviously, yeah, everybody's looking forward to the match between Ospreay and Swerve. Okay, that's great. But there's not many matches on this card right now where it's like, holy shit, I got to see this match. There's not. Except for Ospreay and Swerve. Will I watch it? Sure. It's my job. Will I review it? Absolutely. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and say, oh yeah, this show's going to be, the best show ever. No, the show's going to be okay. It's not going to be the greatest. It's not going to be like All In. No, it's not. It's not. So AEW, they need to switch shit up. That's just the way it is. And I feel like I'm a broken record because I continuously keep saying the same shit over and over again because we're getting the same shit on weekly episodic television. We're not getting anything better or exciting. I mean, honestly, I can tell you guys the honest truth. The last time that I, myself, was excited for AEW was Sting's final run. That was it. And everybody and their grandmother was in tune to what Sting was doing and how they were building Sting towards Sting's last match. And did they do a hell of a job with it? Hell yeah, they did. It was a great send-off for Sting. And I'll give Tony Khan credit where credit's due. It was a great send-off for Sting. Absolutely. Did he deserve it? Hell yeah, he deserved it. Sting was one of the best things on AEW television. Hands down. Hands down. That was the last time that I was like, holy shit, this is his last ride. This is it. And the lead up and the story leading up to Sting's last match was great. It was awesome. In my defense, I kind of wanted something between Sting and Darby. And Darby beat Sting's last opponent. We didn't get that, but Darby teamed up with Sting to go up against the Young Bucks. And it was a great match, man. It was a great match. You had Sting's kids involved, and now one of his kids, one of his sons now are training with Darby Allin to become a pro wrestler. I'm all for it. That was the last time I can genuinely tell you guys that I was excited about something from AEW. And that was in March for Revolution. Here we are, damn near almost July. You know what I mean? It's been like almost 3 months. We haven't got shit. And let's be real. I mean, besides the Sting shit, AEW hasn't been exciting or the alternative, if you will, besides the first 2 or 3 years they were in business. AEW has gone progressively downhill. Progressively. And it's only getting worse. Like, AEW has no direction. And, you look at someone like QT Marshall. When QT Marshall was going to leave the company, and he was leaving the company due to the fact of the direction of the company, because there was no creative storylines being built around AEW. AEW, to me, has a lot of resemblance to what Pro Wrestling Noah is and what All Japan Pro Wrestling was. All Japan Pro Wrestling had a lot of tournaments, a lot of double champions, no real storylines behind those matches, but we got dream matches. We got, Kawada and Misawa. We got Vader and Stan Hansen. Like, those were those matches for All Japan Pro Wrestling back in, the 80s and early 90s. Those were some great matches, man. There was a lot of talent that was walking in and out of those doors in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Dynamite Kid, Tiger Mask, like I mentioned earlier, Misawa and Kawada, Stan Hansen and Vader, the Great Muta. You had all these different great talents that walked through the door at All Japan Pro Wrestling. But there was no storylines being built. It was a tournament-based, in-your-face wrestling action. And some fans do like that. But some fans also like the story. And we're not getting that with AEW. So that's where I believe AEW has this format where it is more like an All Japan Pro Wrestling from the 80s, early 90s to a hint from Pro Wrestling Noah and a lot of, hint from WCW. And I hate saying this because I am a WCW fan. I'm a WCW guy. I told you guys that. I'm not sitting here saying I never loved WWE or didn't watch WWE, but I was a WCW fan. Why? Because I'm a Randy Savage fan. And when Randy's career was coming to an end with WWE, I thought that was it. And then you see Randy Savage join up with WCW and had a really good career in WCW. It wasn't that bad. So it was great to see one of my favorites still have the opportunity to wrestle. And WCW wasn't entirely bad. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we've seen the documentary of who killed WCW and yada, 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 and this, that, and the other, and the third. I get it. But as a wrestling fan, you can't sit here and completely demise what WCW did for pro wrestling. You can't. The NWO and what Hall and Nash did with Hogan, and Hogan going from being a babyface for all those years, turning heel and joining the outside. I mean, it was just a great time to be a pro wrestling fan. Especially when, Nitro and Raw were going head to head and you had the Attitude Era, and it was just great, man. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan. Because you had Nitro, you had Raw, and then you get the introduction of this punk rock wrestling that just is in your face and crazy stuff from all over the damn arena. With ECW, what Paul Heyman brought into pro wrestling changed the game, and it still changes the game till this day. It was a great time to be a pro wrestling fan, and around 95, 96, 97, 98, because we got ECW, we got Nitro, we got the Attitude Era. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan. We don't have that right now. And I told you guys this before, and I stand behind it. What Raw and SmackDown are doing right now, they're miles and miles and miles and miles and miles ahead of what AEW is doing. AEW is no longer the alternative. It's getting to a point where WWE is becoming the alternative. WWE and what, Hunter's doing right now, or I should say Paul Levesque is doing over in WWE, they're firing on all cylinders, man. Seriously. Bringing in the Wyatt family and continuing that storyline now that, unfortunately we lost Bray Wyatt. You had that great video package on Monday Night Raw with Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy both talking to each other and why Bo Dallas, changed and why this Wyatt Six thing is so important to him and how much he wanted to be just like his big brother or just like his brother with Bray Wyatt. It was awesome. It was great storytelling. And then we have the Bloodline. And that's still going from, all last year in WrestleMania. It's still going now. So much so that you get, Solo Sikoa running the show now for the Bloodline, and he gets the addition of, Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga. And then recently on SmackDown, you get the also addition of the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu, who came into SmackDown and destroyed Cody Rhodes. Again, a great addition. Great storytelling. I want that same storytelling for AEW. Make it compelling. Because now, when it comes to Raw and SmackDown, you're going to want to tune in to Raw and see what the hell's going on between Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas. And how this whole storyline, correlates with each other. You want to see that. Then you want to see what's going to happen between Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio. You want to see that. And then when it pertains to SmackDown, everybody and their grandmother is going to want to tune into SmackDown because they want to hear why Jacob Fatu did what he did and what his plan is with the Bloodline. AEW is not doing that shit. AEW is not saying, oh shit, you know what? They left me with a cliffhanger. I got to watch next week because I got to figure out what the hell is going on. We haven't got that with AEW since the shit that happened between MJF and Adam Cole with who's the person behind wearing the devil's mask. And even at that point, that storyline, it was wearing thin. And the well was starting to become dry. Until finally we get the final product at World's End when Adam Cole, like I told you guys, finally turned his back on his bro Chacho and pretty much screwed over MJF. Now, is that storyline done? It shouldn't be. Obviously we're waiting for Adam Cole to get healthy, and yeah, that match should definitely happen again between Adam Cole and MJF. Absolutely, to finish that storyline. Yeah. But we're not getting compelling shit on AEW. We're not. What you're getting is, like Tony Khan said verbatim, quote unquote, I'm booking wrestling for the wrestling sickos. Well, no offense, bud, that it's wearing thin. It's wearing thin. People want storylines and they want builds, and honestly, it's starting to show not only with just the production of AEW, but the ratings. It's taking a humongous gut punch for the ratings because fans are starting to get they're not invested in the product anymore because there's no storylines. I'm all for a good match, but not for nothing do we have to get a dream match every single goddamn time with no build. Just, we're going to have this dream match because this is the way it is. There's no build, man. And that's the problem. The AEW, if they ever had that storyline base, they need to get back to that dynamic. Because if not, this company's going to fail. And this company's going to close up shop. And I don't want that. I don't want that. Even as a wrestling fan, I don't want that. Because like I mentioned this multiple times before, success, it breeds competition. But right now, for nothing, like I said earlier, WWE is miles ahead right now of AEW. AEW is playing severe catch-up right now. And it's not looking good. That's why I mentioned earlier, if you bring in someone like Shane McMahon, it's not a bad idea. It's definitely going to get eyeballs on the product. It's definitely going to be, people be like, holy shit, there's a McMahon in AEW. Why the hell is he here? What is he doing? Again, gets eyeballs on the product. I know a lot of people are waiting for Ricochet. Again, if that were to be the case, am I against it? Hell no. The way Ricochet wrestles fits the entire dynamic of what AEW represents. High flying, acrobatic, and that's exactly Ricochet. And I know Will Ospreay is trying to do whatever he can to bring Ricochet into AEW. And who knows, maybe Ricochet is that surprise entrant against Jeff Jarrett in the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Maybe it might be a stretch, but there's always a possibility. But I don't know. But AEW desperately needs a shot in the arm. And Forbidden Door is not it. Like I said, mentioned multiple times, the concept of Forbidden Door is dead. And they're going to continue to do this pay-per-view with Forbidden Door. They need to change shit up. Like now. It's not working, man. The build's great, but the concept's dead. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe.